Okay, here we go. And I am going to start letting everybody in.
Okay.
Here we go. Yeah, you can go ahead and share your screen.
Oh, am I not
Actually,
sharing anymore?
well, no. Actually, no, you are. I'm sorry. You
Okay.
are sharing. I'm sorry.
Okay. Hi,
How are we doing,
everybody coming
everybody?
in.
All right. We will be starting shortly here. Just to let everybody know that we are recording today's session. Um, so that way you can review if you want to on a future state, and we'll get that uploaded to the ICF and ACMP website as soon as possible. Okay, it is 11:30, so let's go ahead and get started. I'd like to welcome everybody to today's session. Today's session is a collaboration effort between ICF and ACMP Texas. We have the privilege of having Jessica Bronzart here with us, presenting us a topic of bend not break, the resilience for turbulent times. Uh, we look at change management and we look at coaching about how we progress through both of the disciplines, and there's always resilience. There's always a way to manage how we uh, how we go through these turbulent times, particularly from a coaching perspective and a change management perspective. Jessica is I've been a previous speaker for us before. Excellent topic. Looking forward to this dynamic and an exciting topic for us today. And without any further ado, I'll introduce you to Ms. Jessica Bronzer.
Awesome. Hi, everybody. Welcome. Good morning if you are in the Central Time Zone or back. Good afternoon if you're in the Eastern Time Zone like I am, where we've entered the afternoon. I'm super excited to be here. As Manny mentioned, I did a previous session for the ACMP chapter, and then he approached me to say, hey, do you want to do this joint event? And I couldn't be more excited because I at heart am a change management practitioner and then added coaching to my toolkit, and have believed for a long time that fundamentally our work, no matter which side of that fence you're on, our work is about the human and organizational dynamics of change. If you're doing that through coaching or you're doing that through change management consulting, we're really after the same outcome. Our modality is just slightly different. And this topic of resilience that I want to talk to you about today, I think sits squarely in the middle of these two disciplines. And so I think it's a really great topic. And I want to invite all of you into the dialogue today around how can this be used in the coaching context? How can this be used in the change management context? Because it really does cross over. So just a little bit about my background. Oh, let me get there we go. I have a business background and did about 20 years in corporate America, primarily. Most of that was at Lowe's Home Improvement corporate offices. I live in Charlotte, North Carolina, where I am dialing in from today. And I was director of change execution at Lowe's, was my last corporate role before I left in 2015 to start the Sparks Group, which is my executive coaching, leadership development, and change management business. We are a lovely little feisty team of practitioners who are doing this work out in the real world. So just a little bit about me that you can see down there. I really identify with the Big Ten in Michigan State. That's my undergraduate institution. So I don't know if there are any other, football is awfully big down there in Texas, but I'm a Big Ten Michigan State girl, go green. And I'm currently on the faculty at the Center for Creative Leadership and Georgetown University in the coaching program there. So that's just a little bit about me before we get into it. As a way to kind of get into the content today, I want to ask you a really basic question to get us started, not a trick question, and that is how do you define change? How do you define change? What would you describe that as? Let's hear from a couple of people to get us started.
And anybody who wants to unmute themselves to make a comment, go right ahead. Or if not, go ahead and put your comment in the chat box.
Yeah, we could put it in chat. I'll pull up the chat.
I would say progress.
Progress, I like it.
Okay.
From current state to future state.
Current state to future state. We have process of moving from one state to the other. In chat, mindset. What else?
Difference of the status quo.
Yeah, difference in status quo.
That's cool. Okay.
Awesome. Anything else that people want to add? Change is when today looks different than yesterday. Thank you, Kristen. Yeah, so you guys are experts in this. It's not a trick question. Those are really great responses. I'm going to offer you a slightly different definition on that today, and that is that we experience challenges and that we have to recover from them, and that is essentially what a change is. So I'm sure many of you are familiar with a little bit of the neuroscience around change, a little bit of the brain, and I'm no expert in it, so I'm going to keep it really simple and give you a definition of change from the neuroscience space that is essentially when something happens that is not what we expected to have happen. So we human beings are super duper control oriented. We really like to have things be the way that we want them and to be able to control how they're going to be. Just look at, we build buildings, we have air conditioning, we have heating. We are really good at controlling our environment as a species. And yet we still experience a lot of disruption or a lot of change. And so I'm a prediction machine as a human being. And except I'm not a very good prediction machine. That's sort of the unfortunate thing about us, is that we really like to have control. We like to have a sense of predictability. And we experience a lot of disruption because our predictions are wrong or they're not entirely correct. So the definition that I want to offer you today is this idea, and in this language we're using challenge. We can also think of this as a change, is that I experience a disruption in my expectations. I experience a challenge, and then I have to expend energy bringing my expectations back in line with what is actually happening around me. So I'm spending energy until I get sort of back to status quo, back to normal, where we would consider that challenge or that change to be resolved. So this is much more of an individual definition today, a little bit more of a neuroscience definition at a really high level. And so we're going to start from there. Let me figure out how to move the slide here. And those predictions or those expectations, as I mentioned, are really what kind of get us started down this path towards resilience, is that we have a mental model of how the world is supposed to work. We have these predictions, we have these expectations. They're actually often not very realistic, even though we say may or may not be realistic. And that can be predictions, wishes, hopes, desires. Any of that can be a way that this gets expressed. And we experience that disruption when things don't exactly happen the way that we think they will or the way that we want them to. And so we can begin to categorize the disruptions or the changes that we experience in sort of a small, medium, large, according to how much energy we are going to expend adapting to them. So I know probably many of you on the change management side of the house do measure the changes that you're working with to kind of see, like, how big are these? How disruptive are these? How much change management do we need to bring to the table to work on these? This is another way of sort of assessing a change is how much energy is it going to take for people to adapt to this? So we think of the gap between expectations and reality and how much energy it's going to take. So small gaps here use a little bit of energy. I like to think of these as the things that happen every day to us. I wake up, I go out to my car to go drive somewhere, and I have a flat tire. Small disruption takes some energy. I call AAA, I change the tire, I pump it up again, whatever I'm going to do, and then I kind of get back to my regularly scheduled programming. That's one example. Let me ask, who can name some other small disruptions that take a little bit of energy? And I'm sure that many of you have already had one or two of these today. So what are some of the things that have come up for you, maybe today, that we would think of as a small change in this energy spending context?
Getting ready to run out the door to an appointment and discover the dog has pooped on the floor.
Darn it, Rover.
Yeah, Rover.
Yeah, that's a great example. What else?
Yeah, you have a sick child in the chat box. Meeting time changes is another one.
Yeah, what else? Anyone have the cold shower? You go to turn the water on, take your shower in the morning, and the water's cold. I hate that one.
Or you get dressed for work and spill coffee on yourself, and you have to get changed.
Yep.
Yeah.
So these are.
The chat box is blowing up with about internet is down. Client didn't show up for their session. Interruption while reading great text on Teams. Lunch meeting canceled after I left for work. Need to find lunch now. Traffic. It just on and on as
Awesome.
we continue the topic.
Yeah, those are great. I love those.
It can be positive ones too. Everything's sort of negative. It can be like, my husband asked me to go out to dinner tonight. That's a yay thing.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, because maybe you weren't expecting that on a weeknight. And so that's really terrific. So that's a great point. We're going to talk a little bit about the role of positive disruption in our lives and what that has to do with, but I super appreciate you pointing that out. So these little energy spend disruptions are easy to identify. I actually think these moderate gaps in the middle are a little bit more difficult. So let me give you an example, and then I want to ask for some more ideas of what comes up for you. So we think about small gaps as like 5 minutes to recover, an hour, maybe part of your day is eaten up by this disruption, but it's pretty quick and you're back to normal. And maybe you don't even think about it having happened until somebody like me comes along and asks you. Moderate gaps, the recovery time can be anywhere from like a few weeks to a few months. So a work-related example around this might be you're still doing your job, you're plugging along in the same general direction, but maybe you get a new change initiative added to your plate of responsibilities, or maybe you pick up a really important new coaching client. And it's going to take you some time to kind of get up to speed with what that new project or client is. And it's going to be a few weeks or a couple of months until you kind of feel like, all right, I've got it all under control and I'm back to normal. So we think of this as sort of, I'm still generally heading in the same direction that I was heading before, but some moderately significant new component has been added or taken away or shifted in some sense that I'm going to experience as needing to spend energy to get back to normal. So what are some of the ideas you have or some of the experiences you have that would fall into this middle bucket of energy use?
What comes to mind, a new manager. Somebody just wrote that, but that's what I was thinking at work. Like, it's good, but now we have to get to know each other all over again and reestablish a relationship.
Yes, absolutely. What else? This one's a little bit tougher, but let's try and get a couple more ideas out on the table. Personal examples, maybe, and not even at work. What's something that might happen personally that would take a few weeks or a few months to kind of bounce back from?
Okay, so you have in the chat box, you have process changes. Somebody put dealing with elder parents or preparing for memory care. New technology, moving.
Yes, moving is a really good example. Are we talking about moving around the world maybe, or moving across the country, or moving across town if we're in the middle bucket? What do we think?
Right.
What's the scope on the move?
When projects change due to new laws,
Oh, that's a good one.
responding to a medical issue, for example, a surgery.
Mhm.
We have a misunderstanding of communication, change in job responsibilities, more on your
Yeah.
plate,
Yes.
getting a new manager. Responding, Casey, responding with across the country.
Yeah, good.
Right.
Yeah.
All right. Okay.
Awesome.
Blended family schedule change, new job role, and just there's more and more.
Yeah, that's great. Good. I'm so glad you're able to come up with a lot of examples in this middle bucket. Sometimes I struggle to come up with them, but I love all these ideas that have come up. So yeah, we're talking about that mid-level of energy expenditure. And then we get to the paradigm level gaps that require a lot of energy and a lot of time to bounce back from. And these are the big life events that we are all familiar with. So let's hear what these are. And thank you, Manny, for monitoring the chat while I'm on my laptop and don't have a lot of screen
Yes.
space.
Nope, I have you. Okay. So we're starting with getting into recovery from addiction. Pandemic.
Yeah, maybe.
Okay. Death of a loved one, deployment, getting married or divorce.
Mm-hmm. There's one big one I haven't heard yet that's huge that happened.
Job layoff.
Yeah, that would be big.
Having a baby.
There it is. That's the one I was looking for. Yep. So let me stop here and ask. Getting married presumably is a positive event in life, and having a baby, assuming that this child has been planned, is also a positive event in life. So why is it still a disruption? Who can put some words around that?
Your whole life changes, like every aspect of your day. I'm talking about a baby, right? Like when you're just focused solely on the survival of another human being that is helpless when they're first born, you have to be their everything. And it's great, but exhausting and new and challenging.
So talk to me, put some more words around that from a prediction standpoint and from an energy standpoint. Are we able to predict what it's going to be like to add a child to our family?
You can try to, but it's totally unpredictable.
You're going to be wrong, right?
Right. And your energy levels, you're working on the lowest level of sleep that you've ever thought is possible, but still surviving.
I still remember bringing my first son home, who's 16 now. And about 3 weeks in, I thought, I'm never going to sleep again, ever. So that's a really good point. The reason why we find changes, even that are positive, that we perceive as positive, to be highly disruptive is because we are terrible prediction machines, and there is no way that we are going to be able to understand all of the dynamics, all of the impacts that positive change is going to have on our lives. And as a result, it takes an incredible amount of energy to adapt. And having a child is a really great example of that, because that child grows, and every stage of that child's life is different than the stage before. I feel like, yes, I've got a 16-year-old and a 13-year-old, and I'm still like, every time they reach a new developmental milestone or snarky teenager stage, I feel like I'm relearning and redisrupted around parenting. And so I think that is one of the things that I like to point out about resilience as we kind of progress into this presentation, is that I often hear a lot in the change management space, well, if you just get everybody bought in and people perceive it as positive, you're not actually going to have to do any change management. You're not going to have to cultivate resilience. And my offer to you today is that is incorrect, right? That even things that we perceive as positive are going to require some thought from a change management approach, or certainly some adaptation. We're going to spend energy adapting to that disruption. Okay.
Well, we're no longer on you know, when something's predictable and it just becomes rote, we don't have to think about it. And when something's unpredictable, we have to think about it. We have to be conscientious about it. And it's that, you know, that whole level of, you know, you don't know what you don't know, and, you know, all of that stuff. So it's even a different way of, like we talked about before, mindset, and we can't be on automatic pilot anymore.
Right, exactly. And you're essentially talking about we're going to have to continue to spend energy adapting to whatever that is, or we have to continue paying attention, right? So I hope this frame around small, medium, and large is interesting to you in terms of thinking about the amount of energy that we're spending and the time frame, right? There are some changes that we never adapt to. The death of a loved one may be something that we grieve forever or for at least a very long time. And we're going to spend a lot of energy adapting to that. All right, great. Let's keep moving on. So this is a little graph that talks about a portfolio of changes. So what you can see here is that I've got a bunch of changes that are going on simultaneously. And along the left-hand side, you can see an adaptation resources used, or that's code for energy. So there's really two big insights that this graphic is kind of communicating. Can anyone, let's hear a couple of ideas for what the two big takeaways or insights might be here as you look at this. What stands out to you? There's a lot of you in here. Somebody's got to have an idea.
Well, it seems like if you look at the purple ones, there's a lot, but they aren't as big as the gray ones.
Yeah, what's that about?
Yeah.
You're onto it. You're onto it. What do you think that is?
It's over and over and over, and what we would call change fatigue. Just repeated, and not to take away from the gray ones.
Yes.
But in the business life.
Yeah. So you're noticing the quantity of purple changes that maybe are a little bit more organizationally focused.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So do I have, oh, sorry, somebody else was speaking. Go ahead.
No, I was just reflecting on it, saying I think the visual represents, you know, what we were just talking about, small disruption, moderate, and paradigm changes, as well as the fact that there are multiple changes happening at the same time. It's not like one stops and ends and then the other one starts and stops. So they're simultaneous, they're different levels.
Yeah.
They're chaotic.
Yeah. So when I think about adaptation or energy resources that are used, why are divorce and major medical problem so much bigger than all the other ones?
I think it's largely because they are personal and you can't compartmentalize them and separate them out. They're with you 24/7.
Boom. You got it. You kind of hit both points right there. So two major takeaways from this slide. The first is that we cannot compartmentalize, right? So again, another sort of assumption by some people in the world is that I can deal with the stuff that's happening at work on one side, and then I can deal with the stuff that's happening in my personal life on the other side, and never the two shall meet. But if we're playing with this idea of energy, that I'm spending energy to adapt to changes, do I actually have one bucket of energy for work disruptions and one bucket of energy for personal disruptions? No, not at all. My human energy is one bucket of energy, and it's finite. We're going to talk about it being finite in a minute on another slide. But there really is no, from an energy adaptation perspective, there is no distinguishing between work and personal changes. And so from a coach, so I'm going to talk to the coaching folks on the phone for a second. I think this is super interesting from a leadership perspective and from a coaching perspective, because often leaders will get frustrated, and this is relevant for change too, of course. Often leaders will get frustrated that somebody's not coming along, or they're not putting the time in, or they're not committed, or whatever the thing is. And we have no idea in most cases what their personal change portfolio looks like. Like, we can see the purple ones, but we can't see the gray ones. And so I think there is an opportunity for leaders in general, and when we're leading change, to really get curious about the full portfolio of changes that our people are dealing with. And sometimes you'll never know because they're private and they don't want to talk about it. But we would be remiss not to remember that we have one bucket of energy with which to adapt to all the changes. And almost everybody has something significant personal going on at any given point in time, right? That's just the nature of life. So that's the first thing. The second thing that you guys hit on is that major medical problem and divorce are going to consume way more energy to adapt to than any of these other changes. And that's because the closer the change is to me and my personal context, the more it's bigger. It's going to loom larger. It's going to take up more time and energy, and it's going to take longer to adapt to. And so even though global warming and terror, we haven't even mentioned those two on here yet, even though they're on here, and those are huge issues that are out there in the world, their impact on anybody's individual life day to day is likely to be pretty small, right? And so we think of those as big disruptive issues, but from an individual perspective, they're actually relatively small compared to these other things. So two takeaways: one bucket of energy, can't compartmentalize, and actually the personal changes are likely the ones that eat up the most amount of energy and require the most adaptation. That makes sense to everybody?
Yeah, Jessica, I was just thinking, if a lot of these things are going on simultaneously, right? This shows some overlap, but if you stack those, because you may have new production, you may have a reorg, and you have new technology coming all the time. And of course, just the two gray are not the only personal things. Those are, of course, very personal. But if you count all of the things, your kids, your siblings, your neighbors, your people at church, just all of that stuff, that becomes just a crazy looking chart. But in terms of energy use, if you stack them on top of each other, that left-hand column grows exponentially.
Yeah. Well, and let me invite the question here for a minute. What have you all noticed relative to people's energy through the pandemic? What is your general sense of where we are as human beings, having come through, what are we, almost 3 years of pandemic, 2.5 years of pandemic? How's our energy?
I mean, it's exhausting for everybody. I don't know that everyone is fully recovered from a 2-year high energy input.
I would completely agree with you. Yeah.
We have some comments in the chat.
Yeah. What do you got?
So we have overwhelmed, exhausted, mental health impacts. Somebody else put in depleted. Someone made the comment, is it interesting the media focuses on the lower impact, and that's in quotes, and the things we have less control.
Right.
And I find it very interesting that, this is, we're looking at this as, and let's say this is what we expect. But there are some people who, from a personal perspective, even let's say they do a divorce, they don't get impacted. They don't change. That's because as an individual, you have those choices. Where we live also affects things like, for example, terror. For us here in the U.S., we kind of don't see that large effect. But anybody else living somewhere else, that might be a very, very huge
Right. A lot of that is
Uh,
driving
Yes.
immigration and migration to the United
Yes.
States, right?
Yes.
People are
Yep.
fleeing Central and South America because of the terror that is there in many cases. And I
Yeah.
know that's a hugely political issue, but we enjoy a high degree of personal safety here in the United States, right? In
Yeah.
general. Yep.
Yeah. Think about the war in Ukraine right now.
Exactly.
And you think about it from that perspective. So when you look at it, if you ask this question to somebody in the Ukraine, anybody who's thinking about divorces or anything on an organizational, that's minute right now to them. They're not even thinking
Yeah.
about that. They just have terror in front of
Yeah.
them right now. So
Exactly. Yeah. So good insights. You guys are getting the points that this slide really communicates. And I really probably should just add pandemic on here, and it would just like overtake the whole slide, right? That the amount of energy that the pandemic has required has really overwhelmed so many of us over the last 2.5 years. And my gentle observation from my coaching, the coaching side of my work, is that we have a level of PTSD is kind of a strong phrase to use there, but that is a little bit what it feels like to me, is that we have a level of trauma that we have experienced from the pandemic that is going to take a long time to sort out and resolve. So, all right, let's keep trucking here. So I just told you we had one bucket of energy to spend on adapting to change. And now I'm going to contradict myself and tell you that we have 4 kinds of energy to adapt to change. One bucket, 4 kinds. So maybe it fits together that way. But I want to offer you the distinctions around physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual energy. We can basically spend our energy in these 4 domains, and different kinds of disruptions are going to require different kinds of energy to be spent. The idea here, though, is that we have a finite supply of energy available to us before we need to replenish it, plug ourselves back in, take a break. And so all of this kind of, meshes together. But let's play with this for a second. Let's imagine that I am taking a new job. And let's imagine, actually, so let's decide that I decide to say goodbye to my firm, the Sparks Group, and I'm going to go back inside to a large organization and go back to an internal consulting role of some sort. And I have clients, let's say I'm based in Texas, but I have clients, let's say all around the world. I'm supporting an international line of business. If I am spending mental energy adapting to my new job, what might that look like? Tell me some of the things I might be doing if I'm spending mental energy adapting to my change.
Learning the policies, procedures, and people involved.
Yes. Lots and lots and lots of learning, right?
Probably some new technology, new platforms that you have to learn.
Yep.
Yep.
Which for me is going to be even more difficult because not my forte. What else?
We have in the chat box, we have forming new relationships,
Yes.
absorbing new content,
Yes.
adapting to cultural differences involved.
Yes. Good. We got that. That's the easy one. Okay. Mental energy at work. Let's say that I'm spending emotional energy adapting to my new job. What might that look like?
Well, you've got to try to keep yourself positive, despite challenges. So continuing to reframe things all the time, every day, every potentially meeting.
Yeah. Am I excited starting this new job? Probably so, right? If I'm excited, am I spending energy?
Sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. And then what is that excitement probably going to turn into a week or 2 or weeks later?
All right. So in the
Anxiety.
chat,
Yeah, some anxiety maybe. What do we have in the chat, Manny?
we have anxiety, excitement. We have grief over moving from current / your own firm.
Yeah.
We have
That would make
excited
me
over
sad. Thanks for acknowledging that.
excited over possibilities. Yeah, somebody said excited, but it could cause some stress.
Yeah.
Fight the imposter syndrome.
Nice. That's a coach right there.
Fatigue. And
yes.
Having to report to someone instead of being your own boss.
That's also another independent person. I love it. All right,
Yep.
you guys have got it. Yeah, so there are lots of emotions involved around all the kinds of changes that we experience, and certainly starting a new job is no different than that. And I love the call out of the positive emotions and the less positive emotions, because both of those are going to require both of those are forms of spending energy adapting. Okay. All right, let's go to physical energy. A little bit tougher on this one. So I'm in my new job. I have clients around the world. What my physical energy spend look like?
Zoom fatigue.
Zoom fatigue, yes.
Yes. In the chat, you're going adapting to new schedules, potential travel.
Yes. Staying up late, getting up early to do calls in different time zones, maybe?
Yep. Time zones. International calls disrupt rhythm schedule.
You got it.
Are you in a physical office now? Question mark. Different fatigue. Overtired, over caffeinated, not getting to do self-care.
Yes.
And then different languages and cultures to adapt to.
Yeah, good. All right, good. You guys have a handle on it, on what physical energy spend might look like. All right, so then let's go to the last one. We like to include spiritual energy here. Relevant for some people, not relevant for all people. Can look like a lot of different things, and a little bit, maybe a little bit wonky to use in a work context. But what might it look like to be spending spiritual energy if I'm starting a new job? Any thoughts? This is not the cleanest example.
Yeah. All right. So in the chat, we got a couple people chiming in already. Somebody wrote, making sure this opportunity aligns with my vision.
I love that. And values.
And values. Okay. Testing, checking values alignment.
Yeah.
Less time to meditate or spend with church community. Connecting to core values, alignment to my meaning and purpose.
Yeah, good.
These are great. Prayer. Yeah, missing prayer, meditation, or setting a new routine, things like that.
You got it.
I was going to pop in real quick and just say, I think a lot of it also comes to the belief that this is the correct path for you and that this is the way that you're following. And sometimes when you have those changes, you question that underlying, solid foundation, and that can, cause those disruptions. By the way, this is amazing. Thank you.
Oh, good. I'm glad you're enjoying it. Terrific. Those are really awesome examples. Those are some of the best examples I've actually ever heard under spiritual energy. I'm going to have to remember some of those to keep in my back pocket as well. So you guys, I love doing this with coaches and change management practitioners, because you guys really get this pretty quickly. So I love all those examples. So just the idea here is that we spend energy in different ways to adapt. So you've definitely got that here. So let's talk about overload. And so in this context, when we think about change overload, what we think is that the way we think about it is that we continue showing up. So unfortunately, we are not like our smartphones, where there is everyone has seen it. You only have 20% of your battery left. You only have 10% of your battery left. And then what happens to the phone? Shuts off. The phone says, sorry, I can't give you any more right now until you plug me in. And unfortunately, we are not like the phone. So we continue showing up even when we don't have any more to give. And so we, as it says here, we may go through the motions of change, but we will not achieve, generically speaking, productivity and quality goals. So I like to call this unproductive. We call this unproductive and dysfunctional behavior. So it looks like people are there, but their efficacy just starts to disappear or really diminish. And we can think about that in terms of the symptoms that we observe in the change context. So here we have a chart that talks about the degree of dysfunction. We start all the way at the bottom, brief irritation that diverts attention from work. I don't know about you guys, this happens to me multiple times per day, all the way up to some really, really terrible things like family abuse and substance abuse. So one of the things that we can do as change consultants, and in the coaching context, you can do this with an individual or a team as well, is to ask, what symptoms of overload or dysfunction are they seeing in the target group or in the workplace around potential overload? And so I'm going to talk at the very end of the presentation about some of the applications for this work in the coaching context and the organizational change context. But I'll give you a little bit of a teaser that you can actually measure the level of overload in a group of people and match that up to the demand, the energy demand of the change portfolio to form an opinion or an assessment about the ability of the organization to take on the change from a human energy perspective. So we talk about resources all of the time. Do we have the right number of people? Do we have the right number of widgets? Do we have like all the things that we need to make the change go? But we don't really ever talk about the human energy component of it. And that's what this work, one of the things that I think about this work is so interesting. So we'll keep trucking along here. And so then that brings us to, okay, what are we going to do about overload? This is why we're here today, is to talk about resilience. The definition of resilience that I want to offer you today is the ability to deal with high levels of challenge or change and disruption while maintaining high levels of effectiveness, and my favorite part, and well-being. So this was a new add to this particular definition of resilience. Well-being was added a few years ago to really speak to that, not just the outcomes from the person, is the person effective, is the team effective, but also just personal well-being, that we want to take a little bit more of a holistic look at this. The model that I want to introduce to you is one model of resilience. There are many models of resilience that are out there, so I don't want to pretend that this is the be-all end-all, but this is one way of thinking about resilience. And so what can we do when we have resilience, or what does resilience enable? Dealing with ambiguity, adapting quickly and effectively, thriving in adversity, being able to bounce back, using challenges to grow stronger. So I want to introduce the idea to you of a right fit challenge, something that enables us to get a little bit in over our heads, a little bit beyond our capabilities, so that we are invited to grow, but not too much that we are overwhelmed, right? So the pandemic is a great example of us more or less all getting overwhelmed. It was not a right fit challenge for most of us, okay? And then increased tolerance for change. So one of the big ideas here is that we can cultivate resilience by providing challenge in the organization, which means that we can do more change faster as we grow our change muscles. So we're going to dig into that a little bit. Any questions or comments on this definition, or kind of where we are at this point? Okay, I'm going to keep trucking. So some of the benefits of resilience. So these two charts here, they look like EKGs, right? Like heart, measuring our heart performance. They also are a good metaphor for how we experience change. So the one on the top that you see is potentially how somebody with lower resilience would experience a change. And the one on the bottom is an example of what somebody with higher resilience and how they might experience a change. So the first distinction here is that it takes more to disrupt somebody with higher resilience. So you'll notice on the top bar, the change starts, further to the left, and on the bottom, it starts, a little bit in, meaning that the person with higher resilience is not going to be disrupted as easily or as quickly as somebody with lower resilience. The person with higher resilience is also going to expend less energy adapting to that change or that disruption than the person with lower resilience. So they're conserving their energy better. They're spending their energy more wisely than the person with lower resilience. There's also more productive behavior or less dysfunctional behavior. So you can see in the squiggly lines that are going up and down, the person with lower resilience is further outside the bounds of what we would consider to be normal behavior than the person with higher resilience, if that makes sense. And then lastly, the person with higher resilience is going to kind of get back to normal. They're going to recover faster than the person with lower resilience. So there are a lot of advantages to cultivating resilience because it means that we're going to be able to we're going to come through the disruptions that we experience more effectively and faster. And as a result of that, we potentially can actually take on more disruption. We can take on more change. Our capacity or our throughput for change is actually going to be higher. Well, I don't know of a single organization that wouldn't want to be able to put more change through their system than they currently are doing, right? So a lot of potential business benefit to cultivating resilience. So the model I want to offer you today has it's a characteristic-based model, has 7 characteristics: positivity, confidence, priorities, creativity, connection, structure, and experimenting. And so before I dive into a definition of each of those characteristics, I want to give you a little bit of how to think about these and how they work. So we think about these as change muscles. I love this arm. It's a very nice looking arm. We all want our resilience muscles to look like this arm, strong and in shape and able to do what it needs to do, right? So we think of these characteristics as things that everybody has. So it is not a matter of having or not having a particular characteristic. It's that some of these characteristics are stronger for us while others are weaker. However, we want all of those muscles to be as strong as they can because a strong muscle is more efficient in its energy usage, right? So for a muscle that is not as well developed, it's going to take me a lot more effort to get that going. We believe that resilience can be developed. You are not at a fixed point in your resilience. And it matters a lot what your change portfolio is, right? How much demand is being put on your energy? How much energy have you been spending? And so when we talk about the impact of the pandemic, we have been spending and spending and spending energy, and we've been using and using and using our muscles. We're depleted. We're depleted, okay? Regular use is best. We do want to work these muscles, these change characteristics out on a regular basis so that they get stronger. And the way that that happens is that we experience a challenge and recover and we get a little bit better. We have another challenge and we recover and we get a little bit better. That's the nature of how we think about resilience in this particular model. Okay. Any questions so far? Okay, I'm going to keep going. Here are the characteristics sort of all summarized on one page. I'm going to talk through these on the next handful of slides. One of the things I want to say about this is that these characteristics tell a story in order on how we humans approach disruption and work through it. Okay, so I will tell you the story as we go through. So we start with positivity. So again, most of you probably already know this. We're going to touch back to neuroscience for a little bit. My caveman brain is back down here in the back of my head. And we have not evolved as much as our world is moving faster and faster. And so we are still pretty primitive in our inherent need or programming to look out and be careful about threats. Like on some level, we are still worried that a lion or a tiger or a bear is going to come over the horizon and want to eat us. And so we are constantly looking out for potential threats. Our story starts with this characteristic around positivity is, can I see the silver lining? When I look out there at the horizon and I see all these things coming at me, am I able to discern some opportunities? Am I able to have some positivity or some optimism in what my body is programmed to see as a whole bunch of threats and challenges? Okay. So that's our first resilience characteristic. Am I more positive? Am I more open to possibility? Or do I view everything as a threat? Once I've kind of assessed how I feel about things, I'm going to turn inward a little bit and think about my own confidence. How capable do I feel about my ability to tackle this thing? And so we want, when somebody is more resilient, they are fairly confident and feel pretty good about their ability to handle whatever comes their way. People who are lower on this particular dimension are going to feel a bit overwhelmed or feel not capable, or maybe have some imposter syndrome or what have you. Okay. So I scan the environment. I'm looking for opportunities or threats. I think about my own ability to tackle what's coming at me. The next thing I need to do is have an opinion about where to spend my energy. What is most important? What is less important? Where should I be focused? What are my priorities? And so when people are stronger on this dimension, they're able to discern those priorities and point their attention and point their energy at the things that really merit it. When somebody is not as strong on this particular characteristic, everything is important, right? We all know somebody who kind of does the peanut butter spread, right? And maybe it's even us, where everything is important and I'm not able to draw very many distinctions. And so I tend to get then overwhelmed by feeling like I have to do everything at once. Okay. So I have scanning the environment. I see opportunities or threats. I ascertain my level of confidence in tackling those things, and then I draw some distinctions about where to prioritize and where to spend my energy. Next up is creativity. So what is possible? Remember, it wouldn't be a disruption. It wouldn't be a challenge if I had seen it before. So there's something about it that is new. There's something about it that is unpredictable. And what that means is that all of the tools in my toolkit, all of the ways I've approached things in the past may or may not work in this situation. And so creativity says, can you open up the realm of possibilities? Can you consider things that may not already be in your toolkit or that you may not have conceived of before? If I continue to go back to my toolkit, I may be trying to put, what do we say, a round peg in a square hole or whatever the case may be. Okay. Next up is connection. So I brainstormed hopefully a creativity, and now I need to tap into other people. Can I draw on other people for support? Can I draw on other people for knowledge and help and advice? Am I able to connect with other people? This one I think is super interesting for me personally, because what I notice is that when I'm not stressed and I'm kind of a little bit status quo, I do a really good job of leaning into other people for help. But as soon as I start to feel overwhelmed and start to feel overload, I put on my pajamas and I sit on the couch. That's my approach to disruption. When I'm overwhelmed, like my connection really drops when things get really bad. So connection is important. So let me tell you our story where we are now. Positivity, I'm scanning the environment for opportunity or threat. Hopefully I'm able to identify some opportunities and begin to tell my positive resilience story there. Then I'm looking at my own level of confidence and how do I feel about my ability to tackle that. Then priorities. Can I discern where to spend my time and attention, or am I going to try and peanut butter spread everything? Am I able to get creative and come up with innovative ideas and approaches for this thing that I'm dealing with? How can I lean into other people connection for support, for advice, for help, what have you? Everybody with me so far? Can we get, I can't see everybody.
Yes.
Okay, good. Let me stop here. We're kind of in the middle and I've been talking straight for a few minutes. Would anybody like to share a comment about one of these characteristics that they maybe are really strong in and one that they know that they're not as strong in? So I've just told you connection's not a strength for me. What are some of your other personal reactions to some of these characteristics so far?
Yeah. So Heather put it, you can identify with that response to feeling overwhelmed, which I think it's the putting on the pajamas and sitting on the sofa.
Yeah. And binge watching something
And
to
binge
ignore the
watching.
problem. What else we got?
I can say connection I was terrible at a number of years ago. I wanted to be independent. I didn't want to rely on people and friends and family. And it was a big turn when I shifted and started reaching out and, you know, having fun with people and reconnecting with folks. So that's now become a strength, but it was definitely a weakness before.
Yeah, I love that. How has that helped you deal with disruptions or changes that you experience?
Oh, it's huge. Yeah, when I can send a text or make a phone call to someone real quick, you know, it just takes me right out of where I was in that low point of disruption, and at least gets me headed in the right direction back up.
Yeah, lovely. Thanks for sharing that.
Okay.
Let's hear from a few more people.
Yeah. So oh, go ahead.
Oh, no, go ahead.
No, I was gonna read what was in the chat box. So what we have quickly, we have a strong in creativity, struggle with connection. Somebody else puts I have a tendency to withdraw as well. Lake 347 said he can relate to that, Jack. And the last one is when stressed, priorities get pushed aside. Working on growing and blogging on connection, connecting and reconnecting after pandemic, a client topic.
Yes, 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 yes. Awesome.
So what I was going to say is this reminds me of Fredrickson's broaden and build theory of positive emotions. This idea that when we're feeling more positive, we're able to view more options. So there's greater creativity. And so just sort of starting with the positivity, the idea that the mindset about the change affects how the story plays out.
Yes, absolutely. I love that. I'm not familiar with that theory, but boy, does that resonate when you describe it.
Yeah. Yeah, I have one more comment in the chat box, and Dan, forgive me because I'm going to use your name. Dan writes, as coaches, we always talk about authenticity and transparency, but we are not good practitioners of our own coaching.
Amen. Yeah.
So I want to, Dan, I'm sorry I have to call you out, but that's pretty spot on. I mean, a lot of things that we do, sometimes we don't do it ourselves.
Yeah, we're the cobbler's children in many ways, right?
Yes.
I always joke that I understand the human and organizational dynamics of change really well, but don't ask me to change.
Don't ask me to change.
Yeah, no, I love that.
I'll manage it for you, but don't ask me to do it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Good.
Let's see. I got a couple more in here if you don't mind. Let's see.
Yeah, go for it. I think we're good on time for now.
Yeah, we got another 25 minutes. Okay, so when I'm stressed, I go to Kundalini yoga, Pranayama breath, oh wow, okay.
Diaphragm breathing.
Yeah, diaphragmatic breathing as well, is what she wrote. In addition to connection with people, it's good to connect with nature too.
Oh, I love that. Yes.
Yes. And then somebody put in the broaden and build theory, the hyperlink to that. But thank you, Casey, for that, in case anybody's interested in that.
Awesome.
Well. Okay.
Yeah, great contributions. Thanks, everybody. So I meant to say this at the beginning. I'll do it now, which is I'll throw the slide back up when we get through it. But also like evaluate yourself a little bit. Like, just am I high, medium, or low on each one of these? Am I high? So grab a pen and a scrap of paper. Am I high, medium, or low on positivity? That's the first one. Confidence, high, medium, low. Priorities, creativity, and here we are at connection. So high, medium, low on those, just to play with it a little bit. And then our next one is structure. So this one is also an opportunity for yours truly. This is about how are you actually going to approach the thing? And there are 3 parts to this, actually. There's a little bit of depth here that I can share. The first one is, can I create structure for myself? Can I? So I was asked, like, how many of you have bought day planners in the past? Many of us are kind of off paper calendars at this point, but at one point in time, did you really like to have a planner? And how many of you have bought those? And then, do you actually use the darn thing, right? So can I create structure for myself, and do I actually use it? Second part of structure. Third part is, could I communicate that structure to somebody else so they can use it? This, as I mentioned, is also an opportunity for me. And one of my favorite stories to demonstrate my lack of strength in this space was when I became the director of change execution at Lowe's. I was the first person in our center of expertise, and we were working with a consulting firm who was sharing, we were purchasing their intellectual property, and it was getting dribbled into the organization as we were doing the work. And I was the recipient, like I would get whatever the thing was. I was kind of the person. I set up a SharePoint site, and I was kind of holding all this stuff. And if somebody asked me for a piece of the IP, which happened all the time in a big headquarters like Lowe's, as the work was spreading, I could put my hands on any piece of collateral that we had accumulated from our consulting partner in less than 10 minutes. Give me no more than 10 minutes. I'm going to be able to email that to you, send you a link, whatever. Well, then we added members to the COE. And so I had the structure for myself, and I could use it, right? Along come these members of the Change Management Center of Expertise, and they need to learn the IP, and they need to use it, and they need to start consulting on it. And they couldn't find anything. And when I explained to them how it was organized, it didn't make sense to them. It only made sense to me. And so we eventually ended up taking my whole not so intuitive organization of the materials and just giving all of it to one of my new colleagues on the team, who was way better at this than I was. And he completely reorganized all of the intellectual property, how it was all being stored electronically, so that anybody could get in there and understand the organizing system and understand, how to click around and get what they needed. It was a really great example of how I was not, was kind of falling down on the job on structure when it came to standing up our COE and really bringing this into the organization and integrating it. So that's structure. Do a little high, medium, low for yourself on this one. And then the last part of our model here is experimenting, which is after all of this, all of these gyrations and things you need to do to tackle the problem, you actually have to do something. Right. So we all know that if you don't act, the change is going to happen to you instead of you happening to the change. Okay. So let me tell the story one more time in order from left to right. I'm scanning the environment with my caveman brain. I'm deciding whether or not I see threat or opportunity. If I'm more resilient, I'm able to see some opportunities. If I'm less resilient on this characteristic, I'm going to tend to view everything as a threat. Then I turn my attention inward and evaluate my confidence relative to a particular challenge. Do I think I can handle it? Am I capable or not so much? Then, across all the things that I might spend my time and my energy on, can I prioritize? Can I divert or direct my energy to the places where it is most needed? That's priorities. Then creativity. Can I bring some creativity? Can I get out of my own mental box about what works and what doesn't, and what tools I have, and really generate new ideas, new solutions, new possibilities for what I might do in the face of this disruption? Then connection. Then I need to lean into people or lean on people and bring that support in to help me deal with this. Then structure. So I've kind of done the brainstorming and I've marshaled, hopefully, people to help me. Then I need to come up with an approach. And hopefully it's an approach that I'm going to use, and other people are also going to be able to use it, right? And then lastly, experimenting. I need to actually take some action and do something in the face of this disruption. Let me pause there. Questions, comments? Does the story make sense?
Jessica, the story makes sense. I was just reflecting on, what you asked in terms of, like maybe a strength and where someone may not be as strong. So let's say the confidence, if I start to doubt myself, which is early on in the story, how does that impact everything else? So for example, I think one of my positive characteristics or stronger characteristics is around creativity, right? I tend to be a very creative person, but if I'm not real confident or feeling very confident, that may have a negative impact on anything else.
Absolutely.
Any thoughts about, it seems to be linear.
Yeah.
And so, so wanted your opinion.
Yes, I am telling it in a linear fashion, and some of these characteristics are more connected, right, to each other and have an impact on each other, right? So you are absolutely correct that having low confidence across the board may impact your ability to be creative or to draw other people in or what have you, right? So I'm telling it as a linear story, and it's way messier and more integrated than that, in real life. Certainly, we do tend to see an inverse correlation between creativity and structure, right? So if I'm better at throwing the doors open and kind of brainstorming, I might not be as disciplined about how I approach something, and vice versa, right? So we do see some connections like that, and the articulation of it in real life is not nearly as clean as I'm painting it out to be here. Yeah, that's a good call out. There was something else I wanted to say about that, and it just flew out of my mind. It'll come back maybe, and I'll say it then.
Hey, Jessica, I was just thinking a lot of these things that we just talked about, these characteristics, I try to make myself uncomfortable, using my left hand, or, if you pick up a harmonica and you can't play it at all, right? But you just try different things, that takes you out of, you're not confident with it, right? You're not creative because you don't know how to use it. You haven't had any instruction. You don't have any structure, but you're experimenting. So if you work backwards from experimenting, that can lead you all the way up to, confidence and positivity. And that's growth, and it can be fun if you look at it in a fun light.
Yeah. And actually, you're totally hitting on the point that just flew out of my mind that I wanted to make, which is all of us have some of these characteristics where we are stronger and some of these characteristics where we are less strong. So if we go back to that analogy of the muscles, some of these muscles are stronger and some of these muscles are weaker. What we want, what we think is ideal when it comes to resilience, is that you have equal access to all of these characteristics, that they're all relatively developed to a similar level for you. And the more developed they can be, the better off we think, the more resilient you're going to be. But that's not the case for most of us, right? So most of us have a few of these that are really our go-tos, and we tend to overuse them, right? So if I think about somebody who's really, really optimistic and generally has a very positive outlook on life, that can be overplayed, right? Because they might be too Pollyanna-ish about what is going on, and they might actually miss some real risk that is present in a particular situation. So, in general, we want to see them balanced, and the reality is that most of us have favorites or comfortable spaces where we like to go when we're dealing with disruption. So one of the benefits of this model is that there's an assessment. There it is. Here's an example. This is actually let me think about this for a second. This is actually my second ever resilience assessment that I took. I should have left I had both of them on the slide at one point in time. My first one and my second one, I've taken this a number of times. This one is from 2012. So I first was introduced to this work and took this assessment in 2011, and then I took it again a year later. And my first set of results were actually pretty strong across the board. And what had happened to me between 2011 and 2012, my father passed away, my grandmother passed away, and my oldest son was diagnosed with a developmental disability, autism. So in the matter of 6 months, I had 3 what we call big changes, big disruptions happen, paradigm shifting disruptions, 2 deaths and a major medical illness, to kind of touch back to where we were at the beginning. And you can see here where my scores got really depressed. Creativity went down for me, structure went down for me. So 2 things I would say about all that. One is that we think of resilience as something that can be measured. It is a point in time assessment, right? So coaches who are doing personality assessments, where we generally think of personality as being static across somebody's lifetime, resilience, we say, nope, doesn't work that way. We might expect your resilience profile to really shift in a 6-month period if you were experiencing a lot of disruption like I did at that point in my life, or if you were really working to cultivate resilience and develop it, we might expect the whole thing to move up. So I wanted to share a sample of what the assessment can look like. This is a really great, been doing a lot of this during the pandemic, as clients have been overwhelmed and organizations are wanting to bring in some support and a different lens to kind of help people think about that. Questions, comments on this?
Yeah, so there's one question out there, Jessica. Amy's asking, can you say more about how these characteristics of resilience were found? Where did all this come from?
Yeah. So you're seeing the copyright at the bottom from Resilience Alliance. I don't know if anyone on the call is familiar with Resilience Alliance or Linda Hoops. Linda Hoops owns all of this intellectual property through Resilience Alliance. She was a partner to Daryl Connor, Connor Partners. I don't know if anyone has heard of Connor Partners or Connor Advisory. That is who I was trained by in my change management education. And so Daryl and Linda were really wrestling with the question of why some people came through change relatively easily and why some people did not. And so they both, I know Linda has her PhD. I believe Daryl does too. Daryl was a psychologist in the Army for a long time. And he and Linda went out and did the research to really identify what the characteristics were that caused some people to be more resilient and caused other people to be less resilient. And this model is a result of their work. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Amy says, thank you. Lake 347 says, do you have a link to the assessment?
Yeah, so you can email me. You can also go to Resilience Alliance. To get access to the assessment and learn about it. I'm happy to share more about that offline if that's of interest.
Okay, great. That's all I got.
Okay. All right, let's keep trucking. How are we doing on time? Yeah, we're doing okay. All right, so I want to give you a little quiz. I know you may not have jotted down all the characteristic names, but hopefully you have them like at least mildly floating around in your brain. What I want to do is show you a few pictures of changes and invite you to tell me which resilience characteristics would be most applicable or most helpful in that particular situation. Sound good? Okay. I think this is in Atlanta, Georgia. What resilience characteristics are going to be most helpful if you are driving down the road and you run into this sign?
You need some confidence, hopefully.
Yeah, tell me why. Why is confidence important?
Well, you make a decision and you go with it, and hopefully you make the right decision, but you can't waffle after you've gotten in a lane.
Yeah, absolutely. I can do this. I've been driving for 20 years. Yeah. I can pick a lane. What else?
Priorities.
I said structure.
Ooh, why structure?
Perhaps I'm visual and I would be looking at the information and then immediately looking at the lay of the land and then assessing what's true in that circumstance.
That feels like an approach, a process that I hear. So yeah, that would be structure. That would be structure. What else?
Priorities.
Oh, say why priorities?
Because in such a short amount of time, you would need to make a decision, and you need to prioritize. Are you going left, right, straight? And
yeah. You mean I shouldn't be choosing a new playlist during this moment? I shouldn't be spending energy on the music or on talking to my best friend on the phone while I'm doing this.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. You need to be able to decide that navigating this is a priority and put all the other things you could be doing while you're driving your car to the side, right?
Right.
Yeah. Let's hear one more idea. What else would be important here?
Well, you certainly can experiment. Take one and plan on coming back around and taking another.
What would not experimenting look like in this situation?
You stop.
So I have in the chat, I think probably the I don't know, for me, the funniest one. Barbara writes creativity, and she goes, in case I'm in the wrong lane.
Yeah. So if you were not willing to experiment and pick a lane and keep driving, you would be sitting in the middle of a very busy road with people honking at you and flipping you the bird, right?
Yep. And you have Amy confirmed that stopping in the middle of the road.
Yeah, great. All right, good. All right, let's do another one. What do we need here?
Confidence.
Connection.
Say why we need, let's do confidence and then connection. Why do we need confidence?
It seems to be a very big challenge. And so looking at it, you need to have the confidence that you can do it.
Yeah.
And
great.
recognize your ability in doing so.
Yeah, awesome. All right, why connection?
Because you're definitely in this scenario going to have to lean on some other people for support. Asking a stranger, asking anybody to help you get to where you need to go.
Awesome. What else?
Well, creativity, certainly. Got to look for options. Maybe there's an elevator or some other way, because that looks daunting.
Yeah, exactly. Good. You guys are getting the hang of it. All right, last one coming up. This is a disruption. What's
positivity? No, I don't know positivity, but maybe.
Yeah, why positivity?
Priority.
Let's hear a word about positivity first. What would it look like to be applying positivity here?
I mean, it's a start. It's a chance for a complete new start on your home, because you've lost everything. So trying to pivot to how can I now build something better? Or that's a huge
I always joke, I always hated that kitchen, and now I get to have a new one exactly the way I want it. Priorities. Let's hear a word about why priorities.
Well, safety first to get out of the home. But when I see that, it also resonates in that everything that we do in our life, many things are on fire, and it focuses us to identify what has to come first. You get out of the house, you take your valuables, you put water, you call 911, make 911. I mean, there's so many priorities that are happening, but the first is to stay alive.
Yes. Awesome. I love that. Yeah. You got to know where to put your energy. This is not the time to decide that you're going to go get your favorite dress out of the closet and save it. Right.
Well, I also think it makes a difference if you're standing on the curb or you're still inside the building, right?
Oh, say more about what you're thinking when you say that.
Because I was just reflecting on some of the comments. If I look at this, I could be standing out there and saying, you know what, it's just material. We're all here and safe. We're good. You know, we can rebuild that kitchen and everything else. If I'm inside, my priority is, you know, who do I need to get? Who's in the house? I just need to get out of here.
Yeah.
So sometimes it's also about perspective, right?
Yes.
You know, and kind of really understanding where you are at that particular point in time.
Yeah, love it. Okay, let's have one more. What is another characteristic that is going to be important here?
I was thinking connection.
Why?
You know, because at this point, you need lots people rally around you and help provide you things. And even if it's just a bathroom to go to nearby, or just a place to put your head at night, or, you know, help to get connected to the insurance company. And sometimes people give clothes or whatever it is, but this is not I'm going to fix this problem myself.
Right. Right. Absolutely. Yeah. Connection is going to be huge here. Yeah. The other one that I really like here is structure. And you kind of got to it with priorities, but there are 1,000,001 things that are going to happen after a fire. And some of them can happen simultaneously. A lot of them are going to have to be sequenced. And being able to come up with an approach, some way of organizing all of the things that need to happen is going to be super duper important. Okay. All right. Good job. Everybody gets an A+ on the quiz. So some key ideas around resilience. Everybody has all of these characteristics. Remember, we talked about the muscles. I've got all of the muscles, but it's a matter of where we put our energy and how much energy it takes us to apply any given characteristic. So when we think about becoming more resilient, we think about getting more access to these characteristics and being able to rely on them in equal measure. So I hope you get the idea from the 3 disruptions that we just looked at, that different characteristics are really going to be called on in different situations. So we want you to have access to all of them so that when you need that one, it's not such an energy drain for you to bring that one forward. Okay. The other thing I offer is that for me, like, structure has just never been my strength. I compensate for it by partnering with somebody who's better at that. So for example, in my business, I am the big picture thinker and like to be out talking to people just like I am right now. My managing director is super organized and detail oriented, and she brings the structure in a way that I just can't and don't want to, right? So I offer you the idea of development. I also offer you the idea of a compensatory strategy or a compensatory partner, right? Who can bring that characteristic when you don't want to or can't as well. And then again, we hold the belief, coaches, you are gonna, well, we all believe that people can change. We all believe that people can develop on both sides of the coaching and change discipline. And that goes here too, that resilience really can be cultivated. Resilience can be developed. So I want to talk a little bit about some application here. Like I said at the very beginning, I think this is a great topic for the joint meeting that you're having today, because I have used resilience in the coaching context and I have used resilience in the change context, and it is equally applicable and interesting in both, in my opinion. This works really well at the individual level. You can do an individual resilience assessment or introduce this concept to a coaching client or a change leader, a sponsor, and have a conversation with them about their own resilience or about the resilience of somebody on their team or their team as a whole. I have done so many team and group interventions with this work, both in sort of the leadership development context and in the change management context. So it's really a great framework to bring in. And as I sort of alluded to earlier, you can even do it at the organizational level. Like, it can be a legitimate change strategy for an organization to consider applying as part of a broader change mandate or change initiative that they're undertaking. I showed you an example of my resilience assessment from 10 years ago. You can assess an individual. You can also combine individual reports for a team view. That's a really nice thing to do, is to show a team how resilient they are, and talk about how they might cultivate their own resilience, or how they might work together better to make sure that all of those resilience characteristics are being well represented on any particular project or initiative that they're undertaking. And then the last thing that I want to mention that I also alluded to earlier is that there is a fairly innovative and sophisticated way of applying this concept into a capacity management work stream. This is a little bit more on the change management side of the house, but at a departmental, divisional, enterprise level, you can actually measure the demand, the energy demand that a portfolio of changes is going to put on an organization or a particular target group or multiple target groups, and marry that up with a measurement of the human energy that is available to absorb changes. So you can measure the demand and you can measure the supply of human energy in an organization and form an opinion about whether or not the portfolio is going to be successful from a human energy perspective. I was able to do a fair bit of this work when I was at Lowe's, and it was always super interesting to paint that picture and then have a conversation with the sponsors about what they were doing. So thought that would be super interesting to share with you. So I just want to leave you here with a couple of questions, and I'm happy to open it up for some discussion and anything else that's on your mind in our last 10 minutes here or so. But, you know, what are you taking away from this today in terms of your own resilience? What caught your attention? What might you want to pay attention to? For me, I'm always working on structure. And connection is also my other one that I really work on. And then as practitioners, which all of you are, is to my understanding, how do you want to experiment with this? This is really interesting content area. What would it look like for you to bring this into your work with your clients or into your organization if you're internal? I would love to hear some of your ideas in the last few minutes that we've got.
Okay. In the chat box, they wrote, interested in the capacity management model of measurement, which is what they're interested in.
Yeah.
And that's all I got so far.
Yeah.
Unless everybody else is still writing.
Yeah.
There we go. +1, can you share more examples of how that played out?
Sure. So let me tell you a story of one of the groups that I did this work with at Lowe's. So we did it with, I don't even know what the function, I'm not sure I can remember the name, but they were the part of the organization that is in between the buyers or the merchandisers and the store operations team. So they were the people who took hey, here's what we're going to sell. And they said, okay, here's actually what it's going to look like in the store. How we're going to merchandise it, how many we're going to have, where it's going to be placed, all that stuff. So they were kind of the meat in the sandwich between the buyers and the executors in the retail environment at Lowe's. And we went in to do this capacity management work for this organization. And they had a lot going on. They had, so one of the things you do first is get a list of all the changes that are going on, get a list of the initiatives so that you can measure the demand. And they had something like 26 initiatives. I mean, it was just excessive, really. And so we did a little bit of the demand work, getting a picture of all of their initiatives, measuring how disruptive they were going to be. And then we went to focus group their people to ask them about their level of overload and how much energy they had available to adapt to all these changes. And one of the things you do is ask them, what changes are you aware of? What do you know that is out there that you're working on? Well, this group had just been reorganized, completely restructured. And they had a lot of disruption in roles and responsibilities, some really significant changes in terms of who had power and who had influence, and their dynamics internally really, really shifted. And these people were so overwhelmed by that reorg that that was the only thing they could really name or talk about. They were so distracted by the disruption of the reorg that all of the business initiatives that were on their list were kind of like not relevant. Like they couldn't even really articulate what they were. And so we were able to put numbers to that and some data to that. It's not totally scientific. There's some art involved, but we were able to have a very interesting and powerful conversation with that leadership team about, I don't think you really understand how disruptive your reorg was and how distracted your people are. And as a result, this crazy change portfolio that you have, 26 initiatives or whatever it was, it's just too many to begin with. That's a whole issue unto itself, as all of you know. But your chances of being successful with this set of initiatives, given the state that your people are in right now, they are and have been spending all of this energy adapting to this reorg, you are setting yourselves up for disaster, really, definitely not to be successful. And so we were able to have a really powerful change management conversation about going back and kind of cleaning up a lot of the issues around the reorg, right-sizing their portfolio, delaying, deferring, stopping some things, and really trying to move to a more sustainable place with the work that they were doing. I hope that's a good story that gives you a sense of what that work can be.
Okay. There's a couple more comments in here, and it's all around capacity management. So you started something
really
here, Jessica.
Caught everyone's attention, huh?
Yes, it did. The couple comments have been, well, one is, we're looking forward to taking a test, asking my team to do that the same so we can see what it looks like. Would love to start introducing the language of capacity management to my leaders in order to create a more empathy for the workers who have to adapt to all of the changes. Yeah. Interesting capacity management model, the assessment and hearing about results of implementing as well.
I can tell I started to change the phone number here. Let me get the right phone number in. There we go.
There we go. Okay.
Great. Those are great comments. What other thoughts do we have?
Anything else?
Does this feel like, and maybe everyone could just, I can, now that I'm not actually presenting, I could expand out everyone's pictures. Can you, like, if you think that this is an interesting concept that would have application in your work, can you like put your little emoji hand up? Or actually, if you're on camera, raise your hand. I see a couple.
I think it's super useful. And I have a new client who's coming to me because of burnout. It's not, I had a lot of clients with burnout, but this is an interesting way of coming at that issue.
Absolutely, 100%. Yeah, I've done a lot of this work in the healthcare setting during the pandemic, and it has been a really lovely way to have that burnout conversation with people in the healthcare sector during the pandemic. Yeah. Awesome.
Great.
Well, so so my contact information is up there. I love to be connected to my people, right? Those of us who are all in the coaching and change management space. I definitely love what I do and love to be connected with other practitioners. So please seek me out on LinkedIn, drop me a note. Would be happy to continue the conversation in any way. So it's been lovely to be with you all today, and thanks for hanging out with me over your lunch break.
And
awesome.
Manny, Jessica, thank you for this great presentation. We're looking forward to sharing it with more ICF coaches. So excellent content today. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes, it was. Yes, it was. And I'd like to appreciate everybody taking their lunchtime to be with us today. Look forward to more presentations like this in the future. We try to do one collaborative session between ACMP Texas and ICF LoneStar on a quarterly basis. So definitely keep on the lookout for our next session.